Hello, I'm Ollie and this is Criminolly, where I talk about crime, pulp, horror, that kind of thing. Today, dogs. I want to do a review of the horror novel Thor by Wayne Smith. Now, this is a book that was originally published in the early 90s. I think it came out in hardcover in 1992. And I hadn't heard of it until I was doing my 100 book challenge a few months ago, when someone I follow on Instagram mentioned it and was absolutely raving about it. And at that point, I put it on my list of books to buy when I'd finished my 100 book challenge and then kind of forgot about it. And then this month, Kelly Hooked on Books runs a horror book club called the From Hell Book Club, which is fantastic. Her channel is fantastic as well. You should definitely check her out. And this was the pick for this month. So it re-triggered that memory of someone I know raving about it. And I was like, yeah, okay, I'm definitely going to read this. And I did. And I'm so glad I did because it's absolutely fantastic. And it's one of those books where one aspect of the book ends up overwhelming everything else, to an extent that there are definitely flaws in this book, but the part of it that works so brilliantly that I could forgive this book almost anything. Unfortunately, the flaws that are there aren't too terrible, and therefore I found it easy to forgive them. But you'll know this yourselves in books you've read. Sometimes there is one thing in a book that it just does so well that you fall in love with that aspect of the book, and everything else is less important because there's this one thing that's just perfect. So let me tell you what the plot of the book is, and then I'll tell you that perfect thing. Okay, so the book is about a family in the States who've got, so I think there's like mum, dad, a couple of kids, and a dog, a family dog. The family dog is Thor. And much of the book is told from Thor's perspective. The vast majority of the book is told from Thor's perspective. Not in he's not like a first-person narrator. There's an omniscient third-person narrator who's quite what's the word I'm looking for? Quite present in terms of explaining things to you in a way that works really well. But yeah, most of the action is told from Thor's perspective, and Thor is by far the most important character in the book. Anyway, what happens with this family is there's the wife's brother is called Uncle Ted, and he is like a photographer, and he's been involved in a tragedy, and where like his girlfriend died. And he ends up coming to stay with the family. And Thor can tell that there's something off about this brother. But he can't, at first, he can't figure out what it is, because he's known this brother before and really liked him. But now he can tell there's something weird about him. And it just follows that story. I won't go, I'll try not to spoil it. It's difficult not to spoil, because one of the other things to talk about is the fact there is a movie version of this book, which is called Bad Moon. So the fact it's called Bad Moon probably gives you a clue as to what's wrong with Uncle Ted. And it's a film that was made by a writer and director who I really like, Eric Red. But I'd never heard of this film, so I need to check it out. So Eric Red wrote some early films with Catherine Bigelow. So I think he wrote her first, or co-wrote her first film, The Loveless, which is a biker film, which I really like, with Willem Dafoe. He also co-wrote Near Dark, which is probably my favourite vampire film ever. And he wrote and directed The Hitcher, which with Rutger Hauer, which is another great horror film. So I really like Eric Red stuff. So I need to check out this film. So anyway, that was a digression, but that's kind of the plot of the book. And as I say, it's told mostly from Thor's perspective, and that's the bit that's just done so well. Wayne Smith really gets it in terms of how to make a an animal character believable without making them too like anthropomorphized. So you never feel like Thor is a human character. He always feels like he's an animal. But there's an internal logic to his thinking which just works and makes perfect sense. And there's a scene very early on in the book, it's pretty much the first scene in the book, where this dodgy guy turns up at the family house. And he's like, I think he's like a Bible salesman. But he's obviously, shifty. And gets into an altercation with the mum. And you see all of this from Thor's perspective. And Wayne Smith, in that opening chapter, just completely sets up Thor's internal logic and his character and does it really brilliantly. And effectively, it's all about a battle within Thor's psyche, if you like, between his natural instincts, and his natural instincts are to protect his pack, and he refers to the family as the pack. So he considers himself to be part of the pack, and he will do anything to protect the other members of the pack. And people who aren't part of the pack are automatically to be not necessarily distrusted, but viewed with a bit of concern and scepticism. But then the other side is he knows that there are laws that the family has, and particularly the dad of the family, who he sees as the leader of the pack, have, which he doesn't always understand. So he doesn't always understand why he's told he should or shouldn't do something, but he knows he needs to obey that. And sometimes, and it happens, in this first chapter, and it happens a lot more as the book progresses, there's a conflict between what Thor feels is the right thing to do and what he knows to be the law that the father of the family and humans generally would lay down as how a dog should behave. And that tension is just beautifully explored throughout the whole book. It's just done so well. And it ends up being a bit of an emotional roller coaster. So the things Thor, like the internal turmoil that Thor goes through as he tries to reconcile those two competing and often conflicting, things that he feels like he has to obey, is heartbreaking at times. And the end of the book is just so moving. It's absolutely wonderful. So that for me was, the element of this book that completely overrides everything else. And actually, when you break it down, the plot of the book is fine, but it's nothing, it's nothing special. And there's at least one really big plot hole, which just did bug me a fair bit. But the bits that Wayne Smith does right are just so good that I forgave, everything else about the book. This book could have done pretty much anything and I would have forgiven it, because Thor is just such a wonderfully described and convincing character. Probably one of my favourite characters I've read in a book so far this year. I can't remember if that's in, like, if there's an end of the year wrap-up tag, and that's one of the questions. Who was your favourite character of the year? I think it may well be Thor. So sadly, it looks like Wayne Smith hasn't written much else. I think he has got the rights to Thor back and has now effectively self-published it. So it was published by, I forget, but one of the big American publishers in the 90s. And there's another book which is definitely by him called NIGHTLIFE, which is a vampire novel. So I need to get hold of that and read that. But then when you look on Goodreads, there's a load of other stuff under his author profile, but I'm not sure if it's actually by him or not, because a lot of it feels like stuff that's very, very different. So I need to dig into that and try and figure out if it's actually by him or not, because if it is, I want to read it because this was so good. So yeah, that was my thoughts on Thor, a book I absolutely loved despite some flaws. So do let me know in the comments if there are books like that for you, books where one aspect of the book so completely overwhelms everything else that you fall in love with the book despite other problems it might have. This was definitely a book that did that for me in a way that hasn't happened to me for quite a while. I absolutely love this book, and I immediately started recommending it to people who are probably getting annoyed with me recommending it to them. But I thoroughly recommend it to you, especially if you're a dog person, but even if you're not, you need to read this book. I thought it was just brilliant. So yeah, let me know if you've read Thor. Let me know what books there are that have had a similar effect on you. And as always, thanks very much for watching. Hope you're safe and well. Hope you're reading good stuff. And I'll speak to you again very soon. Cheerio.